US Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, the third most senior member of the US government, has suggested she plans to make an official visit to the island of Taiwan next month. This is an absolutely foolish idea that achieves nothing but purposefully provoking Beijing, and it could easily seriously escalate military tensions. Many in the West, including both sides of the US government, believe that US politicians should be able to go anywhere they want. Why is visiting Taiwan such a big deal? Well, today I'll explain why Nancy Pelosi should cancel her proposed trip and why the US in general should stop aggravating the situation regarding Taiwan. For those not familiar with the geography, this is China, and this little island down here is called Taiwan. Taiwan is currently administered on a day-to-day basis by the government of the Republic of China, or the ROC. And it has been since 1949, when the Communist Party of China won China's decades-long civil war. The leaders of the Kuomintang, the heads of the ROC at the time, escaped from the mainland with about 1 million citizens and enforced martial law on the island for 38 years, the longest stretch of military law in the world at the time, since then only being surpassed by Syria. The ROC, which now describes Taiwan, was created in 1911 and governed over all of China at the time. When that government relocated to Taiwan in 1949, the Communist Party of China set up the People's Republic of China, or the PRC. So now we have two separate governments, that of the People's Republic of China, whose national level government is based in Beijing, and that of the ROC on Taiwan Island. But here's the problem, something which many in the West don't understand. Both governments claim to be the rightful government of all of China. Many in the West believe that Taiwan's government just wants to run its own little country on the island of Taiwan, but that's not accurate. According to Taiwan's own constitution, adopted in 1946, the government of the ROC claims to be the rightful government of not just all of mainland China, but also Mongolia, much of the South China Sea, and even Hong Kong. Now, I wonder what the Hong Kong rioters would think of that. In fact, Taiwan's territorial claims involve 18 other countries, and if they had their way, would increase the island's governance territory by a massive 36,600%. Wow. Now, you will have all heard of the One China policy, right? That is basically an agreement that there's only one legitimate government of all of China, and it's an agreement that all of the world agrees on, regardless of which side they support. Following the Kuomintang's escape from mainland China in 1949, many countries supported the government in Taiwan as the legitimate head of all of China, including the USA. That began to change in the 1970s when most countries started switching their allegiance to the People's Republic of China, including the US, which did so in 1979 after signing the second of three important agreements between Beijing and Washington, known today as the three Communiqués, all of which have the US agreeing that there is only one China, that Taiwan is part of China, and that Beijing is the legitimate government of all of China. Now, this is an important point. Both Beijing and Taiwan argue that there is only one China, and both demand any country they have official relations with also pledge allegiance to the policy. If you have official relations with Taiwan, for example, you can't have official relations with Beijing. Currently, though, there are only 13 countries in the world who recognize Taiwan as a sovereign country, including Guatemala, Paraguay, and Tuvalu, as well as the Vatican. Here's a quick test. If you currently believe that Taiwan is a legitimate country, you should probably check your own government stance. There's a huge chance that even your own government does not agree with you. Not even the United Nations recognizes the government of Taiwan as legitimate. Taiwan is just a self-governed territory and not a country in its own right. But the most important factor when it comes to Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her proposed official visit to Taiwan is the official relationship between China and the US. Like I mentioned earlier, when Beijing and Washington entered into an official relationship in 1979, then President Jimmy Carter and China's Deng Xiaoping signed the joint communiqué on the establishment of diplomatic relations, which ended the US's recognition of Taiwan's government and affirmed China's opinion that Taiwan is an internal affair in which no other country has the right to interfere. while the government of the US still has friendly relations with the government of Taiwan, they've agreed not to enter official relations. That means, for example, that the US can still trade with Taiwan, but there's no US embassy in Taiwan and no Taiwanese embassy in the US. This is the same all around the world. It also means that high-ranking government officials should not make official visits to the island, and it's why they haven't done so since agreeing that Beijing is the legitimate government of all of China in 1979. Literally doing so would mean that the US is not only going against its own word, but also that the US is disregarding the all-important One China policy and supporting the rogue government of the ROC. Many bring up the visit of House Speaker Newt Gingrich to Taipei in 1997, but that was quite a different situation. The Speaker of the House is a very high-ranking member of the US government, but Mr. Gingrich was a Republican, while the sitting president at the time, Bill Clinton, was a Democrat. That means that while the Speaker was on an official visit, he was not representing the President and was, in a way, acting as a member of the opposition. China is taking the proposed visit by Speaker Pelosi very seriously and has threatened to take decisive action if the visit goes ahead. And it makes sense, in light of the One China policy and the fact that most countries in the world, including the US, have agreed that Beijing is the legitimate government of all of China. The Pentagon has also warned against the visit, and it said that even President Joe Biden is advising Pelosi to cancel the trip. Others have also spoken out, including former Australian Prime Minister Paul Keating, who has called the proposed visit unprecedented, foolish and dangerous, and is calling on Pelosi to cancel ASAP and for the US to stop provoking trouble in the region. So why is Pelosi so hell-bent on visiting Taiwan in the first place, when she knows it will cause a lot of trouble and tension? Well, I think that's exactly why she wants to visit. She's long been known as anti-China and seems determined to cause as much trouble as possible. And many believe she wants to escalate military tensions in order to create another war on the false idea that Beijing is planning to invade Taiwan and take control. That is reckless, stupid, and ill-informed. All Beijing wants to do at the moment is keep the status quo while working slowly and diplomatically with the government of Taiwan to reunify the country using peaceful means. The last thing China wants is fighting and death. So I certainly hope someone reins Pelosi in as soon as possible. We shouldn't allow the selfish and reckless whims of an 82-year-old idiot to bring yet more pain and suffering to the world. That is the last thing we need.